Hello everyone and welcome to All Things Watched. In this video we are going to talk about episode 2 of the brand new FX original series, which is also released on HULU, Shogun. And episode 2 is of course titled Servants of Two Masters. And in this video we will do our scene by scene breakdown, and we'll talk about some theories and where we think the show could end up going and all that kind of stuff. So let's go right ahead and jump in to our scene by scene breakdown. And so this episode actually opens in Osaka, which is of course 1 year ago. And what's really interesting is that it opens and we see the previous shogun, obviously the shogun that would have passed away, because now there's sort of like this peace treaty or this regiment type thing which was created, which we learn in this episode. It was actually created right now during the time of his passing and during the time of his demise. And so what we learn here is that right before this older shogun actually passes away, he actually calls in Yoshi Yoshi Taranaga, I believe is how you pronounce his name, Taranga. He calls him in privately, and he basically acknowledges the fact that he knows that peace is probably going to be a problem, which I thought was really interesting. And to me, this really concretes the idea that Yoshi is probably actually a good or a relatively good character. It makes me think that he is legitimately only, he wants Japan to do well, but I think that he, just like the old shogun, knows that there's going to be a quest for power because of the fact that the heir to the shogun is so young. And so what you see here on the screen, I pause it with this subtitle, when Yoshi is in talking to the old shogun tells him, "I have ordered the formation of a council of regents." And so something else that was really interesting about this scene too is that once again Yoshi acknowledges the fact that he don't want to be the shogun. He's not after power whatsoever. He do want peace, and as you can tell, even from the first episode, he does seemingly honor and want to honor this peace agreement that they have on the go, and which now you see the formation of. And then they have a really cool sort of like a montage with the old shogun actually talking, as Yoshi is leaving the building, and he asks Yoshi to actually sort of keep an eye out and train the new heir to the throne, the new heir to the shogun, which of course we also seen in episode 1 when he was talking to the young child. And as you can see, as he's leaving the building, something that I thought was really clever in the writing was that he actually says, the man who sits at the top or stands at the greatest height is the loneliest man. And how true is that? So in the meantime, we end up coming back into our present day, and we see all the Portuguese here. As you can see, is Vasco, and he's sort of hanging out with all these other priests and all these I guess what you would say, these these I guess Catholic priests or these Catholic leaders and whatnot. And he's here having lunch with them, and it does seem, to me, they do seem a little bit suspicious. It seems to me like they are sort of maybe have some of their own secrets, or maybe they have their own agendas and whatnot. So it'd be very interesting. I'm very interested to see how that plays through and whatnot. But I just thought that seeing them here at this lunch, I just thought that was very significant, and so I just wanted to sort of throw that in there. And so we end up coming back then to John, and of course we know that John Blackthorne is, I still don't know really what he is. Is he, I really don't know if he's like a merchant or if he's a trader, or I'm really still not really 100% sure what he is. I don't think he's a pirate, even though I think they did refer to him as a pirate in the first episode. I don't get that vibe from him. I don't feel like he is a pirate, but I also don't think that he's necessarily telling the truth either. So anyways, he's here with this Portuguese Catholic father type thing, priest dude, and he doesn't trust the priest. He's, and he's very open about that. I do like how bold and how courageous and how open John is. He's not afraid to speak his mind. He said straight up, I don't trust this Catholic priest. I fear that he's not going to translate accordingly, and afraid that he's probably going to twist his words just because of the fact that their countries are at war. The Portuguese is Catholic and John is Protestant, so they're at war and whatnot. And he actually, says that to Yoshi. And so Yoshi takes all this stuff into consideration and basically ends up ordering John to go to the prison, just because another seems like another leader or another guard or someone that seems to have some form of authority or some form of even, I don't know about authority, but he has, seems like Yoshi has a lot of respect for him, because as soon as he comes in, he orders John, who they call the Barbarian, he orders him to go to the prisons. And it's funny because I'm pretty sure in this scene John actually asked, how, for how long, and then like they don't really answer him. They just throw him into the prison, which I thought was really funny. And so, in the meantime, when we come back home here, then we see Tota Mariko, as I believe is how you pronounce her name, or Mariko, or Mariako, I believe is how you pronounce her name, and she's starting to have some troubles here at home. Her husband seems to be, I think her husband doesn't really I feel like he doesn't really trust Mariko, being around Yoshi so much, or maybe it's like a jealous thing. I'm not really 100% sure, what his problem is. I do know that, their culture and stuff, demands a lot of respect and honor, and it's a really big deal, and I just think that he don't like the idea that she's spending so much time with Yoshi, but also that she's spending so much time with John as well. So, as you can tell, it's causing a lot of strife and a lot of problems at home for her with her husband. And then, of course, literally while, he's saying this, basically looking at her and literally saying, what right do you have outside of this household and whatnot. One of Taranga's, people or messengers comes in and summons her to go and speak to Taranga. And so as soon as she agrees, and she goes and meets with Taranga, and then she finds out and learns what it is that he actually wants. And what it is that he wants is that he wants her to actually become the translator for John, because she can speak Portuguese as well, and she's pretty good, pretty fluent. And I think that she chooses him, or he chooses her, I think, so that she's not too biased. I think that Yoshi is very intelligent and he's very smart, and I think that he knows that if John's people and the Catholic people are at war, then maybe he's not quite able. I think that he's afraid that maybe the Portuguese would actually twist John's words and whatnot, and not translate properly or appropriately. So I think this is why he summons her. He knows that she's bound by law in order to be faithful to him. And so, he basically orders her to become the new translator for John and Yoshi, and also that, he kind of wants her to study him, to get information from him, besides just translating. And I think he's really just trying to use her to build a relationship with John, for her to find out as much information as she can. But still a really cool sequence here. I really love the whole Japanese culture and the way that everybody interacts. And, I'm really liking this whole honor system and just the whole culture. I think it's very intriguing and it's very interesting, and I actually think that Yoshi Taranga is very intelligent. I think he's smarter maybe even than what meets the eye. He seems to be the only leader that's actually doesn't want the power out of everybody else. It seems like everybody else, he really is sort of like the black sheep, or sort of like the outcast, so to speak, to this whole Japanese regiment, or whatever you want to call it. He really is the outcast, and so I like how he thinks. You can tell that he's very intelligent, and he also seems pretty calm too. He doesn't seem very scared or anything. But anyways, in the meantime, we go back to the prison, and we see John. And John actually starts to communicate with a fellow prisoner who's here, and he really starts to fill John in with a bunch of information. He starts to describe who Ishodu is. I believe is how you pronounce his name. Ishido, or so, yeah, Ishido, I think is how you pronounce his name. But either way, he tells him the story about Ishido and the other four leaders and the other four heads of the regiment, or regent, or whatever they calls it, and regions or regents or whatever they calls them. And he basically explains, gives them a little bit of backstory, explains where they all come from, how they came into power, why they were chosen, and all that sort of stuff, so to speak. But in the meantime, the very next day, we see Ishido then, and he's here with the other, seats of the regents, or whatever they're called, the regiments, the other leaders, and he's like, hey, let us vote. And the idea is that they're voting to have Yoshi Taranga impeached, but I do think that they're trying to go a little bit further, because once they impeach him, I do think that they're going to want to vote to actually have him killed as well. They do fear him, they do see him as a threat, but of course, as soon as they want to vote, and as soon as Ishido is ready to vote to get rid of Yoshi, some of the other members, especially more towards the religious side, the Catholic leaders, they're basically like, no, we can't deal with this because he has the prisoner, John, who they call the barbarian. That sort of goes against their faith. They're saying that they can't get rid of him, they can't get rid of Yoshi or Taranga until Taranga gets rid of John, because John, he's a Protestant, so he's an insult to their faith, and they're basically saying that we can't act on Yoshi until he acts on the barbarian, so to speak. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it, is that, they can't really do away or get rid of Yoshi without getting rid of the barbarian. And I think that Yoshi knew this already. Obviously, he's very intelligent, and so this is why he's keeping John around, I believe, because he just wants, he knows that the moment the barbarian goes, whether he gets killed or released, it will be the demise of Yoshi, and so obviously he doesn't want to take that chance, so he's keeping John around for many reasons. I think ultimately he's keeping him around so that he doesn't have to lose his space or his seat, but also, too, I think he wants a little bit more information about where he comes from, and maybe even a little bit of information about how the world works where John comes from. Maybe he's interested in trading eventually. I don't know. He might not be interested in that whatsoever, but I do think Yoshi is smarter than what he appears, and I do think he has a plan for John. If not, he would have just killed him already. And so I think the plan, and plus the series open with John, so I think John is going to be one of the key players through the whole series. I don't see John dying anytime soon. At least not until the finale, anyways. And and even then, I don't think he will. The whole series started with his character and them, coming into Japan, and Yoshi as well is a big character. In fact, I would say Yoshi would probably die before John, but we'll have to wait and see. But either way, they're here at the vote. Now, in the meantime, back at the prison, John is once again still talking about this. Still talking to this, to this person. The prisoner, and the prisoner actually gives John a ton of information, including information about secret bases that is being set up in a certain area of Japan, which is being ran by and governed by the Portuguese, and by sort of their Catholic sections and their different factions and whatnot. And so John is learning all this information, which for a fact he's going to end up using to his advantage eventually. He's not learning all this by an accident. There's a reason for all this. There's a reason why he's learning all this, and he's just, soaking up as much information as he possibly can. And so, in the meantime, when we come back to the Catholic priest, we see this other character who's here, and I'm going to see if I can find his name. I don't know that I'm going to be able to find his name. Is his name Ferreira? I could be wrong, but I think his name might be Ferreira or whatever his name is. But either way, he's actually someone who's not involved with the Catholic Church. He's not a part of the religion. He works for the Crown, I believe it is. He says in this episode, and he's looking for the release of a certain ship, which I think is actually John's ship, the ship that John ended up getting caught on in episode 1. Well, Ferrari, or whatever his name is he wants to take that ship and go out to sea, but in order to do that, he has to get consent, I'm assuming from Yoshi or from one of the leaders, or maybe the whole council. Either way, he's looking for consent, and of course, he doesn't have the consent yet, and so the father, the priest here, is trying to explain to him that there's stuff going on, but this gentleman, of course, reminds him, hey, I don't work for you or the ministry, I work for the crown, basically saying, he doesn't work for the church, he works for somebody else. And so in the meantime, that father then ends up coming and speaking to Mariko, or whatever her name is. And so, he basically talks to her about how she's doing with her Portuguese, how fluent she is in speaking, how good she is, and how, she was kind of, one of his better students and whatnot. And I think he also asks her in this scene as well about, what are her thoughts about the barbarian? Is she angry or insulted by the fact that he is against their religion? He doesn't believe in Catholicism. He doesn't believe in all that kind of stuff. And, I think she tells him that she looks at him as an enemy, and she thinks that it could even be dangerous to have him around, and whatnot. So I just thought it was very interesting, and I just thought that whole sequence was, it was really cool, because he's sort of confiding into her, and whatnot. And so when we come back, then we end up seeing another main character. I can't remember his name. Let me see if I can find it. And this is not Ishido. Let me see. Yeah, so I believe his name is Kashigi, I believe is how you pronounce that name. I don't know, I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but his name is Kashigi, and he's actually here, and he's being questioned by Ishido, who is wondering, basically wants to know everything about the barbarian, or John, of course. And he, right away tells Ishido that John is a pirate, and and that he has a really big hatred towards the Portuguese and whatnot. And you can tell Ishido really hates Taranga as well. Like, he insults him to some degree, saying how it's that he's never really known anything for manners and whatnot. And so, really, I think that all Ishido is doing here, in my opinion, is he's just trying to play the field and figure out, a lot about. I think, honestly, he's just trying to figure out what Yoshi is planning, and why he is keeping and protecting this barbarian, and he's just trying to figure out what he's doing, basically. And so, in the meantime, we learn that the barbarian is supposed to be transported to go to a certain location, or something's supposed to happen to him, and they end up getting ambushed. And this is actually the first time we get a really cool, pretty intense action sequence, and I have to say, the action sequence was done really well. It was really cool, very slow motion, and whatnot. So, the barbarian was attacked by somebody. I'm assuming it's probably Ishido or one of the other leaders, maybe Hiro Matsu, or somebody like that. I don't think I think Hiro Matsu is actually good. But either way, I think he was attacked by Ishido's force, or one of the forces, but he actually ends up getting saved by Kashigi, the person who was just talking to Ishido. So it does seem like Kashigi is more loyal to Yoshi than what he is to Ishido, but it's still too early to know. I could still see him flopping on either side, but as of right now, it appears like he's still loyal to Taranga, because he does end up saving John, and he actually tells John to say, "I am a dog," and of course John says it because he did save his life. But like I said, right now I feel like he's kind of playing both sides, but I do think he's more likely going to stay with Taranga. I think just because of the way the culture is, and how they do believe in honor and all that kind of stuff. So I would be a little bit surprised if he backstabs Yoshi. And not only that, but I also feel like Yoshi is so intelligent that he would probably figure it out anyways. But we'll have to wait and see where it goes and how it goes. So we then end up coming back then to John, and now John is presented once again to Taranga, but now he has Mariko as his translator. He's no longer relying on the Portuguese or on on the anyone from the church or any of the Catholics, which once again I think Yoshi did intentional, knowing that they are enemies. There's a good chance that they could twist his words. So now Mariko is here, and I have no dates in my mind. I can call it right now from this episode. I do think that there's going to be potentially at least some form of connection between John and Mariko here. I think that now that she's been assigned to stay close to him, learn about him, I do believe that she might, there could be an attraction between them. But it's hard to know because she is, part of the culture, and she is very loyal to her husband and also very loyal to Yoshi. So maybe there won't be an attraction, but something tells me that there could end up being something there. She might be able to break through to John maybe more than anyone else because of the fact that she is a woman, she is attractive, and she does speak his language. So I do feel like that could be another reason why Yoshi, wants her to be his translator, besides the fact that he trusts her. And so John gives Yoshi all the information that he learned from, being in the prison and just from observing, and perhaps even some information that he knew anyways. To begin with, he literally draws out a map for Yoshi here in the sand, explaining to him how the Portuguese has claim over Japan, over the non-Catholic parts of Japan and whatnot, and how they're sort of taking over certain areas, and how that a lot of this stuff is documented. He also tells Yoshi about the hidden base which they were building in that city, which I can't remember. It starts with M, I think, but there was a secret base that Yoshi did not know about, and so he tells him about all that and whatnot, and it's pretty cool to see. I really enjoyed seeing all that stuff, and seeing John sort of trying to explain to someone all these plans. It's hard to know right now if Yoshi really believes him or not, but either way, after he was done explaining, Yoshi ends up sending him back, basically gives him his own set of quarters. Like, he don't send him back to the prison, he sends him back to a really nice place, and Mariko sort of brings him there and sort of tells him if he needs anything, just let her know. And so then we get a really cool, intense scene between Yoshi and the father, the Portuguese Catholic priest or whatever. Yeah, I believe he's a Catholic priest. And we see Yoshi, he's supposed to sign these documents releasing the ship that was supposed to be released, the one that they were arguing with earlier on the docks. And of course he doesn't sign it, and he actually confronts this Catholic priest and tells him, hey, I know about your secret bases. He's like, maybe I'll start, helping you and giving you authority to do things when you start talking to me and explaining to me why you have these secret bases and why you're putting them up. And it was just such a cool scene, very intense. And so then we end up coming back to this leader, and I believe that this is one of the leaders that sits at the head of the table, and they are one of the ones that's also waiting for that ship. I think they're waiting for the ship to go, and also they want to get rid of the barbarian. So I believe it's this leader who ends up sending out this assassin, and she ends up going over to the castle, or over to the quarters where the barbarian and also where Yoshi is staying. And it's just once again an amazing fighting sequence. She goes in there and just rips everybody apart, which was so cool to see. She doesn't hold back. She just goes in there and really just lets loose. And of course, she ends up being stopped by Yoshi himself. Taranga is there waiting, and he ends up hitting her with the blade. And she actually attacks him, and John ends up saving him, and then he ends up saving John. So it's like just this big commotion, this big thing going on here with this assassin going through, killing everybody. But what was really interesting, what we end up learning, is that at the very end, is we end up learning that Taranga actually switched his room, we'll say, with John's, which means that that assassin was not there to kill Yoshi. She was actually there to kill John the barbarian. And so that was sort of like a big revelation at the end of the episode. And so Yoshi obviously is probably going to start listening to John a little bit more now, because now that he's had an attack on his life, now that this assassin has come to end his life, then I think that actually validates what he's been saying a little bit more. And once again, Yoshi is not an idiot. idiot. He's seen warfare. He's been a part of this culture forever. He knows how this stuff works, and so he knows that Jon is probably more valuable to him alive, beyond the fact that they're not able to impeach him, or they're not really able to go to war as long as he has Jon. So I think he's starting to realize that there's more to Jon than simply the impeachment, or simply stopping all this, everything that's about to go down here, potentially, with the peace treaty and whatnot. But I think he sees that Jon could actually be an ally, considering that Jon is enemies with the Catholics and with the Portuguese as well, who are, sort of mingled in with this Japanese culture. And so it's more like, it's not necessarily that they're friends or even allies. Is more like, well, the enemy of my enemy is a friend, more so than them actually getting along and being allies. And so I do predict that in future episodes, they very likely will start working together, and I do think that they will end up joining forces. I don't really know 100% what Jon could offer besides information. I mean, I would assume if he was in a boat from the first episode, he's probably a good sailor, but beyond that, I don't really know what else he could really do for Yoshi in terms of combat. I don't see how beneficial he would be to an actual war, unless they just simply let him go or something. Like, I don't really know how Jon would play, what part he would play in this culture and in this, basically civil war that could happen here. I don't really know where his place is there, but I do think that he has some valuable information, and he is willing to share that. I don't know. Maybe he could train them how to sail or something. I don't really know that part of it yet. I don't see the path that Jon is going to end up going down, other than the fact that he is basically a shield for Yoshi, and that they can't really do anything to him until he deals with the barbarian. But by the end of this episode, him and Jon, Turanga and Jon, has really started to become friends, and they are starting to have a relationship. And so I'm really excited to see where that goes in the future. I'm really excited to see over the course of this series. This is only the second episode, and Jon has already now went from, basically being in a prison to now having his own quarters, to already having somebody attack him. Actually, they attacked him twice, really, because they wanted to move him or transport him, and he was attacked, and then he ended up being attacked again here at night. So that's 2 assassin attempts against his life now in this one episode. So, Yoshi is, taken into his own hands, and got started to take measures into his own hands, and he started to protect him. And like I said, he's very clever. Seems like, honestly, out of all the leaders, he's probably the most tactical. I feel like the other leader, especially like Ishido, I think that he could be a good fighter, but I think that Yoshi, Turanga, would be more tactical. I think he would be more intelligent and more strategic. So rather than being a brute force, he's more of a stealthy, more of an intelligent force. In terms of playing a game of chess, I think that he would win, as opposed to he'll win not by brutality, but he'll win by outsmarting the other leaders. He's already done a great job, even just in these first 2 episodes, at using this law that they've come up with, and this law that they're sort of sworn to, and he's already done a great job at using those rules and those laws against the other leaders. And he's already got himself, and also now the barbarian, in a pretty good state, and he's been protecting himself and the barbarian pretty good so far, using the rules and regulations that they themselves are forced and obligated to follow because of their culture and their honor, and just the way their whole system works. But overall, I absolutely love this episode. Once again, very cinematic. It was really nice to see a little, glimpse of action. Still not crazy pedal to the metal, but it was enough there to really give you a little glimpse of what can come. It seems like they're handling the action sequences, the choreography, and the direction really well, and it seems like it was done really good. Once again, very high quality transitions and camera angles done very well. I'm very satisfied with the transitions in this series so far anyways, and overall I really like this episode. So with that being said, folks, that's my review of episode 2 of Shogun. Let me know in the comment section below if you've seen it, and if you'd like to tell me why or why not. If you like this video, click that subscribe button, and until the next one, take care.